ladies and gentlemen, listen to me closely. There's one thing separating people who rise and people who stay stuck. It's not intelligence. It's not luck. It's this: they've trained their brain to love hard work. You can too. But first, stop waiting to feel motivated. That feeling is a byproduct, not a prerequisite. Your brain doesn't reward effort naturally, unless you teach it to. Let's break it down. You weren't born lazy. In fact, your brain is hardwired to pursue effort, but only under the right conditions. The problem is, in today's world, comfort is always within reach. We're surrounded by instant gratification, scrolling through social media, ordering food with one tap, skipping the hard parts of life without even realizing it. Over time, this weakens the brain's relationship with effort, but that relationship can be rebuilt. You can actually train your brain to not only tolerate hard work, but crave it. Your brain has a built-in reward system governed by neurochemicals like dopamine. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's about motivation and drive. It's what pushes you to act, to move toward a goal. But here's the catch. Most people only get that dopamine spike when they achieve something. They wait for success to feel good. And because of that, they burn out, quit, or avoid starting in the first place. They never tap into the real secret, which is that dopamine can also be released during effort. If you train your brain to link struggle with purpose, this isn't just theory. It's biology. Neural circuits in your brain are plastic. They change based on what you repeatedly do and how you interpret your experience. If every time you work hard, you complain, dread it, or check out mentally, your brain starts to associate effort with pain. It learns this is something to avoid. But if you can flip the narrative, if you can step into hard work and tell yourself, this is the good part, your brain begins to create a different association. It starts to see effort as progress. It starts to reward you while you're in the middle of the work, not just at the finish line. That's how top performers keep going. They don't always feel excited or motivated. They've simply built the habit of linking pain with growth. They've trained their brain to understand that when things feel difficult, when they want to quit, that's actually the signal that change is happening. It's not a red light. It's green. You can do this too, but it starts small. The next time you're doing something difficult, whether it's finishing a workout, working late on a project, or simply forcing yourself to concentrate, catch the moment when resistance kicks in. That voice in your head that says, this is too much. Don't ignore it. Don't try to drown it out. Talk back. Say, this is the part where my brain grows. This is what I came for. But doing this, you're engaging your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision, making, and control, and using it to override the limbic system, which wants short-term comfort. Every time you do this, the neural connection between effort and reward strengthens. Over time, this rewiring becomes automatic. You'll start to feel a subtle shift. The same challenge that once drained you starts to energize you. The work that felt like a burden becomes something you seek out. Effort by itself is not enough. You need to mentally reward the effort. You need to teach your brain that hard work is a good thing. This is what turns discipline into desire. It's what separates people who struggle for a few weeks from people who show up every day for years. And it's not about being a special kind of person. It's about being someone who chooses to rewire their brain for the long haul. You can condition your mind just like your muscles through repetition, intention, and consistency. When you do, the discomfort doesn't go away, but your relationship with it changes. You stop running from the burn. You start leaning into it. That's how you train your brain to love hard work. And once that happens, there's nothing, truly nothing, you can't take on. Most people live their entire lives chasing rewards. They work hard because they're expecting a payoff, a paycheck, a trophy, some recognition. That mindset works for a while, but eventually it breaks. Why? Because life doesn't always deliver immediate results. Sometimes you put in months of work and no one notices. Sometimes you fail. And if your motivation is tied only to the outcome, you'll quit the moment progress slows down. The solution isn't to stop wanting success. It's to rewire how your brain experiences reward. You can train your brain to release dopamine, not just at the finish line, but during the work itself. That's where the real power is. Dopamine is often misunderstood. People think it's just about pleasure, but it's a chemical driver of motivation. It's released when you anticipate a reward, not just when you receive one. This is important because it means your brain can be trying satisfaction in the pursuit, not just the result. When dopamine starts to rise during effort, you begin to enjoy the process itself. That's what makes it sustainable. This is not something that happens automatically. Most of us were conditioned early on to celebrate only the wins. We were praised when we got an A, not when we studied late into the night. We were applauded for the medal, not the training. Over time, that wires our brains to think effort only matters if it leads to a visible result. And when we don't get that result fast enough, motivation collapses. But you can flip this script. You can take conscious control of where your brain assigns value. Here's how: the next time you're in the middle of something challenging, pause and remind yourself why you're doing it. Not in a vague, motivational way, but in a grounded, intentional way. Say something like, "This grind is what separates me." Most people would stop here. "I'm building something stronger right now." When you do this, you're not waiting for a reward. You're creating it in real time. You're giving your brain a reason to release dopamine during the work. This mental shift is powerful. It turns hard work into a game you're excited to play. It makes the pain meaningful. You stop counting down the minutes. You start immersing yourself in the moment. The discomfort becomes the point, because that's where growth happens. Even simple practices can reinforce this. For example, after completing a hard session of work, don't just collapse and distract yourself. Take 30 seconds to sit quietly and acknowledge what you just did. Reflect on the fact that you pushed through resistance. That's a form of reinforcement. It's like giving your brain a pat on the back, not for the outcome, but for the effort itself. Another way to build this mindset is through framing. If you frame a task as a chore, your brain will resist it. But if you frame it as training or as a challenge that builds you, your brain approaches it differently. Say you're doing a grueling workout or tackling a complex project. If you view it as, "This is making me tougher, sharper, more focused," your brain starts to release dopamine during the process. The reward system gets activated not at the end, but in the middle. Over time, this becomes automatic. Your default response to challenge shifts. You begin to crave the feeling of pushing yourself. You want the work because you've linked it to identity, to purpose, and to internal reward. That's the edge most people never develop. They chase dopamine through distractions or cuts or praise. But you, if you train your mind right, can get it straight from the process. And when you get to that point, you don't need external validation to keep going. You don't need perfect conditions or quick results. You're fueled from within the signals you give it. That's not just motivation, neural discipline. It's what creates consistency, passion, and long-term success, not because you're obsessed with the outcome, but because you've learned to love the climb. Stress is often misunderstood. We're taught to see it as a problem, something to avoid, suppress, or eliminate. But stress, in its pure form, is not your enemy. It's actually a signal from your brain and body saying, you're stepping outside your comfort zone. You're entering the zone where real change can happen. When you learn to interpret stress the right way, it becomes a tool, not a threat. The goal isn't to eliminate stress, but to build a better relationship with it. What we call stress is really your body preparing to perform. Your heart rate goes up, breathing gets faster, muscles tense. Your brain becomes more alert. All of that is your system mobilizing energy. It's not malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do under pressure. But here's where the shift happens. If you interpret those physical signals as danger, you trigger panic. If you interpret them as readiness, you trigger performance. It's not the stress itself that hurts you. It's how you label the stress. People who thrive under pressure don't have less stress. They just see it differently. To them, that tension in the body means they're alive. It means they care. It means they're doing something that matters. And that belief changes the entire response in the brain. The same adrenaline that causes fear in one person becomes fuel for another. That's the power of perception. Research has shown that the way we think about stress affects our biology. When people believe stress is harmful, their bodies respond with higher inflammation, decreased focus, and poor recovery. But when people see stress as enhancing, as something that sharpens their performance, their bodies adapt better, recover faster, and even release higher levels of beneficial hormones like DHEA, which helps with resilience and brain function. It's not just mindset, it's neurochemistry. So how do you shift your response? You start by welcoming the feeling. The next time you're about to do something hard, give a speech, lift heavy weight, have a difficult conversation, and you feel that tight chest or racing heart, pause. Don't fight it. Why am I feeling this? Instead say, this is my body getting ready to rise. That one sentence changes the story. It sends a message to your brain, we're not in danger. We're in pursuit. Another strategy is to breathe into the stress. Use physiological sighs, 2 quick inhales through the nose, followed by a long exhale through the mouth. This isn't just a calming trick. It's a direct command to your nervous system to shift from panic to focus. It brings your mind back into the present and tells your body, I'm in control. It's also important to expose yourself to controlled stress regularly. Not overwhelming levels, but enough to stretch you. Cold exposure, intense physical training, high, focused cognitive work. These are all ways to increase your tolerance to discomfort. Each time you push slightly past your comfort zone and survive, your brain updates. It learns, I can handle this. Over time, the stress response becomes smoother. You don't get overwhelmed as quickly. You stay composed longer. That's resilience. And it's trainable. The truth is, stress is part of every meaningful pursuit. You can't build anything great, a career, a body, a mindset, without stepping into discomfort. And that discomfort always comes with stress. The people who achieve the most aren't the ones who feel the least stress. They're the ones who've learned to use it. They've conditioned their minds to see challenge as invitation, not interruption. So the next time you feel stress creeping in, don't shrink from it. Lean into it. Remind yourself that this is the edge of your comfort zone, and that's exactly where growth lives. Train your brain to see stress not as a stop sign, but as a green light. That shift alone can change your entire path. Every day, your brain is being shaped by what you do or don't do in response to discomfort. And one of the most powerful ways to deliberately train your mind to tolerate stress, build resilience, and strengthen focus is through cold exposure. Not as a trend, not for social media, but as a scientifically grounded tool to rewire your nervous system and reshape your relationship with challenge. Cold exposure works because it introduces controlled stress when into cold water. Whether it's a cold shower or an ice bath, your body reacts instantly, heart rate spikes, breathing becomes shallow, your brain sends signals of discomfort, urging you to get out, to retreat. But if you remain calm while every part of you wants to escape, you're doing something far more powerful than just enduring physical discomfort. You're training your brain to stay composed under pressure. This matters because how you respond to cold is how you respond to life when a challenge hits. Whether it's emotional, physical, or mental, your nervous system activates in a similar way, but when you've trained yourself through cold exposure to stay present in discomfort, you're building a reflex not to panic, but to breathe, to stay grounded, to push through. There's deep biology behind this. Cold exposure causes a sharp increase in norepinephrine, a neurochemical that enhances alertness, focus, and mood. It also spikes dopamine, the same chemical that fuels motivation. But here's the key: unlike the temporary spike from scrolling or caffeine, the dopamine increase from cold dozier is more sustained. It can elevate your mood and focus for hours after just a few minutes of deliberate cold. You're not just building mental toughness, you're changing your neurochemical landscape. But the real benefit isn't just in the cold. It's in the decision to enter the cold on purpose. Every time you make the choice to step into something uncomfortable, you reinforce a new identity, someone who doesn't run from difficulty, someone who acts despite resistance. That identity, formed through action, becomes a powerful anchor when you face the hard parts of life. Cold becomes a daily reminder: discomfort is not the enemy. It's the entrance to strength. You don't need to start extreme. Just a 1-2 minute cold shower in the morning where the water makes you flinch and your breath shortens is enough. The key is not to numb yourself to it, but to meet it fully, to feel every second of it and learn to control your breath and mind in the process. That's the training. It's not about toughness. It's about nervous system regulation. When you do this consistently, you build what's called stress inoculation. Your threshold for what you can handle rises. That email that used to overwhelm you, it feels smaller. That workout you used to dread, you move through it. That hard conversation you've been avoiding, you face it with a little more clarity and calm. Why? Because your nervous system has learned from experience that you can stay present when it's uncomfortable. And this carries into every part of your life. Discipline becomes easier. Focus becomes sharper. You start trusting yourself more because you've proven that you can act in discomfort. That kind of trust isn't built by reading or thinking. It's built by repeatedly, on purpose. Cold exposure, when used intentionally, is one of the fastest and clearest ways to forge that internal strength. It's free, it's simple, and it works. Not by removing stress from your life, but by changing how your brain responds to it. You stop seeing discomfort as something to avoid and start seeing it as something to master. That shift from fear to control, from escape to action, rewires not just your body, but your identity. And that's what makes all the difference. Most people think progress comes from massive action, big wins, sudden breakthroughs, but that's not how the brain works. True, lasting change is built through small, repeated behaviors. The brain doesn't respond to intensity as much as it responds to consistency. What you do every single day, even in small doses, matters far more than what you do once in a while with massive effort. If you want to train your brain to love hard work, you need to understand this principle deeply. A repetition builds identity. Every time you show up and do something hard, even if it's just for 5 minutes, you're casting a vote for the type of person you are becoming. Each repetition reinforces a neural circuit. Think of it like laying down tracks in your brain. The more you repeat a certain behavior, the easier it becomes for your brain to access that pathway. This is the foundation of neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to change itself through repeated experience. It doesn't change all at once. It changes one rep at a time. Let's say you want to build mental toughness. That doesn't start with a huge, overwhelming challenge. It starts with the decision to do something uncomfortable every day and follow through. Maybe it's waking up early. Maybe it's doing an extra set at the gym. Maybe it's sitting down to focus for 20 minutes without distraction. Each time you do it, you're reinforcing the circuit that says, I do hard things. That's how discipline becomes your default, not from motivation, from wiring. This is why routine matters so much. Your routines aren't just habits. They are signals to your brain of what you value and what you expect from yourself. If your routine is filled with comfort, distractions, and easy choices, your brain adapts to that. But if your routine includes daily friction, purposeful effort, controlled discomfort, the disciplined action, your brain begins to shift. It learns to expect effort, to normalize it. Eventually, you stop resisting the work because it becomes part of who you are. There's a science to how this works. When you engage in repeated behaviors, especially ones that require effort and focus, your brain starts to myelinate the neurons involved in those actions. Myelin is like insulation on electrical wires. It makes those brain signals fire faster and more efficiently. This is how athletes, musicians, and peak performers develop automaticity. They don't think about effort anymore. It's embedded in their system, and you can do the same thing if you commit to the reps. It's also important to understand that the brain values process more than outcome. When you focus only on results, get in shape, finishing a project, achieving a goal, your motivation fluctuates with progress. But when you focus on the reps, showing up, doing the work, honoring the process, your motivation becomes stable because it's tied to something you can always control, your effort today. One of the most powerful things you can do is track your consistency. Not to pressure yourself, but to remind your brain, I'm someone who follows through. Even a simple calendar with check marks, each one representing a completed rep, builds momentum. The brain loves visual cues. It turns abstract effort into a concrete story. I don't miss. That's identity. And once you build that identity, hard work stops feeling like a chore. It starts to feel like alignment. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. And the way you do that is by shrinking the resistance. Make it impossible to fail. Set your reps so low that you can't make an excuse. 1 minute of breath work, 1 cold shower, 1 page of writing. Stack these day after day, and over time, your brain will crave the repetition because it's no longer just what you dog. It's who you are. That's the secret. Consistency is not about willpower. It's about structure, intention, and identity. If you can commit to small reps repeatedly, you will train your brain to not only handle hard work, but to love it. And once that switch flips, you become unstoppable. If you want to train your brain to love hard work, you must understand the deep link between your thoughts and your physiology. Your body and brain are in constant conversation. What you think influences how you feel, and how you feel changes how you act. But it also works in reverse. How you move, breathe, and carry yourself directly affects what your brain believes is possible. This means that by learning to regulate your physical state, you can take control of your mental state, especially when you're under stress or facing something difficult. One of the most powerful tools for this is breathwork. Most people underestimate it because it seems too simple, but breathing is not just a function of survival. It's a lever you can pull to shift your entire nervous system. When you're stressed or overwhelmed, your breathing becomes shallow and fast. Your brain reads this as danger. It goes into fight or flight mode. But if you deliberately change your breathing, if you slow it down, deepen it, and take control, you're sending a direct signal to your brain that you're safe, alert, and in control. The most effective pattern for calming and refocusing the mind under pressure is the physiological sign: 2 quick inhales through the nose, followed by a slow, controlled exhale through the mouth. This taps into your body's natural mechanisms for reducing stress. When you do this, your heart rate slows, your muscles relax, and your brain shifts from chaos to clarity. Just 2 or 3 rounds of this breathing technique can change your entire mental state, not by changing your thoughts, but by changing your physiology first. But breath isn't the only tool. Your posture, your eye position, and even your muscle tone influence how your brain interprets your environment. When you stand tall, pull your shoulders back, and look forward instead of down, you're reinforcing a sense of control and readiness. This might seem small, but it matters. Your body language is constantly feeding data to your brain. Are we in control, or are we under threat? If you slump, look down, or collapse under pressure, your brain believes it. But if you hold yourself with intention, your brain follows. This is why movement is so essential to mental clarity. Hard work often leads to tension, not just mentally, but physically. If that tension builds up and stays in your system, your focus drops, your motivation dips, and your ability to think clearly is reduced. Regular movement, whether it's walking, stretching, or training, acts like a reset button. It flushes stress hormones out of your system and restores balance to your nervous system. And when your body is balanced, your mind becomes more resilient. Sleep, nutrition, and hydration also play a key role in regulating your physiology. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. When your body is under-recovered, your brain becomes more sensitive to stress. Things feel harder than they actually are. But when your system is well-fed, well-rested, and well-regulated, your brain is more adaptable. It becomes easier to stay focused, maintain discipline, and push through discomfort. All of this reinforces one truth: if you want to train your brain to love hard work, you must respect your body as the foundation. Your physiology is not a side detail. It's the control panel. When it's optimized, your mindset sharpens, your motivation stabilizes, and your identity strengthens. You stop relying on hype or willpower because you built a system, a body-brain feedback loop that supports high performance. So when you feel resistance, overwhelm, or fatigue, don't just ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "What's my body telling my brain right now?" Then act accordingly. Use your breath. Move your body. Realign your posture. In doing so, you're not escaping the hard work. You're creating the internal conditions to meet it with strength. Control your body, and your brain will follow. And do it consistently, and hard work becomes something you lean into, not something you avoid. That's how you build a system that thrives under pressure. That's how you train your brain to love the grind